Welcome to the Playground Talks podcast, a podcast for busy parents who want to own their parenting style and develop a stronger sense of how to handle challenging situations. I am Tamia Friat, your host and a mother of three. In this podcast, I will interview psychologists, practitioners, behavioral therapists, teachers, and other experts about topics that bother all of us as parents so you can get both the parenting principles and practical aspects that resonate with you, give you confidence and joy. Hey there, thank you for joining me for another episode of the Playground Talks podcast. And before we dive into today's topic, I want to share with you a very exciting news. I found this great, easy to use way for us to communicate. So in the show notes, you can find a link. And once you press that, you can leave me a voice message, you can comment, and you can even create a discussion between anyone who wants to share something else on the topic discussed in the episode. So make sure to try that out. And for today, we have a special guest. Her name is Jennifer, and she is the co-founder of Tech Wise Littles. Jennifer is a mom of two and an educator and a licensed family therapist. And she worked for 20 years in public and private education, helping families with healthy tech boundaries and developing kids' attention and focus skills. And you'll hear how lovely and genuine she is with helping you to come up with those 5 specific tips around creating healthy screen habits and avoiding tech tantrums. So let's just get started. Hey, Jennifer, how are you?
Hi, Tammy. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited as well. Thank you for coming. I think many parents attach guilt with letting their kids to be on screen, and that's why I'm so glad you came. You're going to help us understand how can we be more intentional with screen time and form these healthy screen habits and avoid those tech tantrums. So let's start with how excessive screen time affects children's brain and development.
Sure. Yeah. So this is a huge topic of research that's been going on for a while with teenagers, and research has kind of taken a pivot, and now they're looking at kids younger and younger because kids are being introduced to screens in infancy. Babies are having FaceTimes. The average toddler is on screens over 2 hours a day. And what they're beginning to learn is that there are riskier ways to use screens as well as more beneficial ways to use screens. And that's really the heart and soul of TechWise Littles, is to help parents through the nuts and bolts of those more beneficial ways to use screen time so they can drop that guilt, as you mentioned. I mean, there's so much guilt around screens, and it's because of some of these fears that parents have. And some of them are rightful fears, and then other fears are not. And so just to kind of dive into the research, what you're asking is excessive screen time. That was the first thing research looked at. How much is too much? And what they were really looking at were kids that were on screens excessively. So that is 7 or 8 plus hours a day. Now the research has pivoted, and they're seeing that even kids that are on screens a lot less, just several hours a day, but are using screens in riskier ways, such as screens alone, certain programming or more handheld tech. Those kids, they are seeing certain patterns arise, such as language delays, executive functioning delays, emotional regulation. So as parents, that gives us pause. None of us want that for our kids. And the curious thing about the research is not saying screens cause this. It's a correlation. There's a relationship. And what the research is still really building out, and this is the exciting part, is it's not that screens are bad. It's that if kids are on screens 2, 3, 4 hours a day, there's only so much time in a day, right? And so if your child's on screen 2 hours a day, what would they be doing if they weren't on the screen? They would likely be playing outside, interacting with other people, moving their bodies, getting exercise, getting fresh air. So it's not exactly that the screens themselves are bad. It's what are the screens replacing in the natural development of childhood that are known, proven brain foods for kids. And those are things such as free play, time outside, time with other kids, time in nature. So that is the curious part of the research. And that is where we try to help parents bolster the time off screens as well as, make screen time more beneficial.
I like the realistic approach of saying we cannot just not give the kids screen time, because let's admit that we as adults also kind of addicted to our screen. So
100%. Yeah. And that's another thing in the research. They used to just look at kids' screen time. And now what they're noticing is that it's a whole family system, right? Our kids live with us, and parents' healthy tech use or unhealthy tech use patterns plays into some of those risky factors for kids. It's not that the screens are bad, but if parents are staring at their phone all day long, they're less likely to notice, small request of their child, and it's less back and forth talking, right? So if there's less back and forth real-time talking because the parents are on their phone, that does lead to slower language acquisition. So again, it's not screens bad, it's that what is it distracting us from that we know is super good?
I'm sensing that we have to have a different episode talking about healthy screen time for adults.
Yeah, it's something we're always working on.
So I like that it's not only about screen is a bad thing, but it's also replacing some other stuff that could be so much helpful in developing our kids' brain. So I love that perspective. And let's dive in. So what are the 5 ways to prevent tantrums and develop those healthy screen habits?
Sure. Well, any parent who knows if there's a screen in the house, if there's a phone, there's going to be that one more show battle. Your child is going to want more. And this is where screens can be hard for parents because in some ways they give us some extra downtime, but in other ways they become a point of contention. So our whole philosophy is letting screens be a point of connection rather than contention. So what we really want to start from the get-go with our kids, when they're little, when they're toddlers, when they're being introduced to screens, is that screens are a way that our family can be brought together rather than something that's isolating and tearing our family apart. It's not you in your own corner on your screen, me on my phone in my own corner. No, we're going to bring the family together and get joint connection around screens. So one of the easiest ways to prevent tech tantrums using this connection umbrella is to look at the devices we use. For example, we are always on our phones as adults. They're everywhere with us. And then we have the iPad. But if we can swap handheld tech out for television with our kids, that's an easy way that can prevent a lot of tech tantrums. Here's why. So handheld tech, it's in our hands, it's in our kids' hands. So that naturally just makes it a little bit trickier to turn off or to end the process. Whereas a TV is across the room, it's far away, it's in their head that it's more of an adult object. And we'll get to this at the next point. But just that simple swap of devices can make a huge difference, not only in the prevention of that one more show battle, but also for eye health. Like when we hold things close to our eyes, it causes eye strain. Our eyes were not meant to look at screens up close. They're meant to see the world from far away and take in that perspective. So that's the first thing, swapping handheld tech for TV. Number 2, speaking of TV being more of an adult device, we really want to start languaging our devices with our kids, like language how we use our tech and language how kids are going to use tech. So from the get-go with my 2-year-old, when she would reach for my phone, I would say, that's mommy's tool, not your toy. Here's a toy. So just that language switch of like, mommy's tool, not your toy. She began to learn that like, this was mine and I use it as my tool and you have separate toys. And then also the languaging of, I'm going to use my phone to do blank. So teaching what phones are used for, what devices are used for. So it doesn't just look like a bright, flashy object to her because kids aren't born knowing what phones are. They're just fascinated with what we are fascinated with. They want to be like us. They see us staring at our phones. They're going to want to grab the phone. As long as it's flashes, it's cool looking. And so that language switch has been really important, as well as narrating when I'm on tech. Mommy's going to get on mommy's tool, which is a computer to send an email right now. Mommy's going to use her phone to make a phone call right now. That's number 2, just using that language of tool, not toys. So kids don't look at it as their play device and think they own it and they have rights to it.
I like the idea of setting the boundary and saying, you know what, this device is mine. It's just not for your use. It will avoid so many of the conflict.
For sure. That goes for FaceTimes too, or when your kids want to see photos. It's important for you to hold the device. Like, it's not for them to sit there and swipe. You know, when we FaceTime, we use a stand for our phone or our iPad. And that, again, gives distance for eye health, which is really important, as well as prevents like that temptation to just scroll. We have that temptation. Like, these devices are meant to make us want to swipe. And so imagine a 3-year-old who doesn't have the built-in cognitive abilities that adults do. Like, we have self-regulation, hopefully by our 20s, 30s, 40s. Kids don't. So it's a losing battle for them. So we have to help them in that losing battle. So that's number 2. And then number 3 is, and it may seem weird if you're not used to using these things in your house, but we love them. We have visual timers. We have one in the bathroom near our bathtub, and we have one in the living room, like for getting ready, for screen time, and you can turn the knob. So we let our daughter turn the knob and she gets to set her time. And then when it runs out, she gets to see the color running out. That's the end of that activity. So for activities that are harder to transition in and out of, we use a visual timer. We love one by Time Timer. They make them in all colors. And that's been a real saver for us for, as I said, those harder transitions, those things that can have meltdowns, like getting in and out of bath or turning off screen time or getting ready for school. So you prep the child saying like, okay, we're going to watch shows for half an hour today. We're going to set the timer for half an hour, and the timer will go off as the show's ending. So you might want one more show. You also prep them for that. Like, you might want one more show and it might feel hard at the end, but just so you know, we're watching shows for half an hour. And then when the timer goes off, we're going to go do something else. So visual timers have been great.
Can I ask you something? Just like, I'm thinking step forward with 2-3 years old, it will be hard for him to shut the device off. But since as a parent, I want my child to be independent and be able to close the device by himself. So when would you think it's appropriate time to start and say, here's the controller. When the timer is off, please be responsible and close it?
It depends on your child. Tech is something we teach. It's something we parent, just like every other aspect of parenting. That means you're sitting with your child and say, Mommy's turning off the show today. Do you want to do it with Mommy today? Look, you did a really good job. Would you like to do it yourself tomorrow? And those little swaps, I really like that you brought this up. Those little swaps can give them that little piece of control that can help also mitigate those tantrums, because it's not us coming in from the outside telling them what to do or not do. They get the power to press the button. They love that.
I have a strong-willed one, and that was a game changer for me. Once he could close the device by himself, you could see he's really proud of himself doing it, other than it just turned off, and he was so upset when that happened.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Any place in all aspects of our kids' lives where we can build their confidence and give them choices and give them a little bit of that control, it's so important, because toddlers' brains want to be in the know. They want to have control. So the more we can offer that to them, the less they're going to have power struggles in other areas. When they feel independent in areas that we feel confident they can be independent in, it's going to be less of a power struggle in other areas. So we're like that too as adults, like with our own families, with our bosses. Like, we want to be independent. We don't like to be told what to do.
We don't like micromanagement.
No. And a toddler's whole life is micromanagement. So the more you can let them have that power, it will prevent the power struggle with you.
I also liked how you said to break it into little steps. Like, first we'll do it together, then provide them the opportunity the next day to do it by themselves. And so step by step to make sure that it's really happening. And it does require time management for the parents, because it's not going to shut the device himself. You'll need to put the timer with him and just, kind of say, hey, I heard something. What are we going to do now? And so I think that's the one
Sure.
thing that it took me some time to understand that, yes, if I want to do it, I need to be more involved now. But in the long term, it will, they will be independent. I can trust them to really close the device. So I like the steps, step by step.
And I love that you brought that up because that's our whole mission here at TechWise Littles is because, yes, it takes a little bit more time and energy to do some of these things now. And it's making our future parenting life easier in a couple of months when they become teenagers. I mean, tech is not going away, but these are healthy habits we build in now that like tech is a point of connection in our family. Tech is something we join together around. We talk about together. I'm not hiding I'm using my phone in the laundry room. I'm naming, like, mommy's going to make a call. Mommy's going to send a text. All of these things help us see our own tech use. And because if we're naming it all the time, we might be like, wow, I'm texting all the time. Maybe I should have a little reset.
Do you know that in the evening, I'm saying to my kids, okay, so now it's mommy times to have some fun, watching whatever she wants. So I'm also framing that.
Yes, no, that's important. This is adult time. And, that leads into our next point. Like another way to prevent tech tantrums is actually what we call the unplugged 15. So a lot of times our kids are tantruming about many topics in life because they just want our undivided attention. And so, again, this might seem like a long time at first, but it's a muscle we can build. And it's something that has made night and day changes in our own family. I also have a very strong-willed 4-year-old daughter. And the evenings, post preschool can be difficult. And when we implemented this unplugged 15, it was miraculous. And it's actually grown and it's just been life-changing for our own family. And that is taking 15 minutes. We do it after dinner and right when she gets home from school, those transition times where your kid just needs extra attention is all phones go away, like in another room, not in our pockets. And we just sit on the ground with her and follow her lead. There's no planned activities. You're not going on Pinterest and getting, this amazing show to do. You're just sitting with your child for 15 minutes. You can use that timer and following their lead. Maybe they want to talk. Maybe they want to lay in your lap. Maybe they want to play with blocks. Maybe they want you to read them a book, whatever it is. And that 15 minutes, if you can't do 15, try for 5 or 10. But it downregulates me. It's become my favorite part of my day. At first, I was like, can I really do this? Like, I've got dinner to make. We got to pack lunches. It slows me down. And when I'm a slower parent and a more present parent, my children feed off that energy. And they are slower and more present. And tantrums just kind of fade away. So, big picture preventing tech tantrums has to deal with, can we have one-on-one with our kid for 5, 10, 15 minutes? Can we get that unplugged time with our kids daily?
I love this. We actually had a behavioral scientist coming and she told the 4 whys behind kids' behavior. And one of them is attention. So I'm really glad you brought that up again. It's a great episode. If our listeners did not get the chance, they probably better go and listen to that. And I love the idea of let's just give them that attention and this will distract them for bringing up whatever they can, including tech tantrums, because they got what they want, which is simply attention.
It's simply attention. Exactly. And I have to listen to that episode, by the way. And that leads me right into our last way to prevent tech tantrums. Again, tech does not have to be a point of contention. It can be a point of connection in the family. And one of the best ways to do that is we have an initiative called We Before 3, which says, before the age of 3, and ideally after, you really want tech time to be together time in the family. Media is meant to evoke emotions. Our kids are still learning how to process the real world, let alone the 2D world. And tech is something we parent, like that remote control. You're teaching your child, like, this is how mommy turns it on. Let's do it together. And then next time you can do it by yourself. Tech was handed to us in our 20s. We got updated into the tech world. And so for us, we got handed tech and we onboarded pretty quickly. And so there's been a whole generation of parents that are like, well, that's how we do it. We just hand our kids tech. There's not a lot of parenting that goes involved. And actually, we're learning it's the opposite. Just like everything else, we're parenting tech. And so before the age of 3, when our kids' brains are just exploding and their hearts and minds are in these really formative years, we want to practice this we before 3. And what does that look like? Does that mean like you're sitting with your child during their entire show and you're not getting anything done and you've just lost your own sanity time? No, it doesn't have to mean that. But what it does mean is that you are with your child during part of their show, ideally bookends, and then in the middle if you can't do the whole thing with them. So that looks like we're going to watch a show together, prepping them. We're going to watch this today. Or here's your 2 choices. Would you like to watch this show or this show? Great. And they get that little control. You're going to watch this show. That's so exciting. This show is about this. And I can't wait to see what happens. And then you sit with them for that first minute of the show. Get them set up. Make sure they're comfortable. And then if you need to run to the kitchen or, do something else, that's fine. And then you're in proximity to them. So you're either in the room or just in the next room. Like this is not the time to go like clean your garage. And you're checking in with them, making sure, what you see on their face is that they're comfortable. Checking in. What are the characters doing? That's so funny. Making eye contact is huge because screens can become just like a flat world and kids need to process emotions with other people and other brains. So making eye contact, coming back and giving them that hug. And then at the end of the show, rather than marching in and being like, oh, timer's off, the show is off, and, pressing the button, nobody likes that. Nobody likes abrupt transitions or having their show turned off midway. So you're going to come those last few minutes of the show and cuddle up. What's going on? How's it wrapping up? Or just cuddling with them. And then you're there when the timer goes off or when the show ends and you're turning it off together. They can press that remote if they want to. And so the time is bookended by an adult. One of the ways I still get stuff done as a parent while my kid is watching a show is, I bring the laundry to the couch or I bring my computer to the couch and I'm sitting there right next to her, monitoring her screen time with her. So it's not an alone experience. It's an experience where she has an adult there with her. And this is really crucial, particularly in those early years. The AAP, the American Academy of Pediatrics, suggests no screen time before the age of 2 outside of video chats. And there's good reason for that. Because before the age of 2, kids are not processing media as we would process media. It's more of a distraction in their own brain. Like they're not really computing what's happening. They may look mesmerized. They may be able to stay for hours, but it's not being processed in their brain. And then around age 2, that starts to shift. And between 2 and 3 is when you want to, start that gentle introduction to screens. And we go into all of the who, what, wheres, and why of how to do that in our resources. We have a course. We have tons of free resources at TechWise Littles. And because when we became parents, we weren't sure how to do it. I'd been working with middle schoolers for 20 years and talking to them about healthy tech boundaries and executive functioning and learning. But when I became a mom, I was like, where's the guide? Where's the guide for toddlers? And screens are not going away. And it's not realistic for most families to be entirely screen free, nor should we feel like we need to, as long as we're getting in those other activities, as long as our kids are getting outside and time in nature and that one-on-one time with us. That's the real important that we just want to highlight.
I love the approach of we can use the device to connect, and it doesn't mean that we have to be with the kid the whole time, because realistically, sometimes we need that time just to do some stuff.
Sure.
Especially when the kids are young. But I wanted to ask if you could just give us a clue of how much time it's okay for the child to watch screen time by age group.
Sure. Every parent wants to know how much time is okay. And as I said in the beginning, excessive screen time is a risky factor, but we're realizing it's not the riskiest factor of screen time. And so I will gladly give you numbers. Here they are. But what we want to pay attention to is like, are we giving our kids screens when they're melting down rather than being with them in their emotions? Are kids being alone in their screen time? Are they watching hyper-stimulating shows that look like, slot machines? Or are they watching things that are at the natural pace of the world? Like those are the points that we really dive into in our course and get really nuts and boltsy, like do this, don't do this. But numbers, here we go. The American Academy of Pediatrics and the CDC have really similarly aligned metrics. So what they say is under the age of 2, outside of video chatting, no screen time. The AAP did recently update saying 18 to 24 months. If you want to begin screen time, you can do so with high quality programming if you are there with your child. And they put a number which to me is kind of arbitrary. Like I said, I feel like these other factors matter, but they said up to 1 hour a day. And why I say it seems arbitrary is because 1 hour a day is their recommended screen time through age 18. So 18 months to 18 years is their recommended allotment of screen time. It doesn't increase. So it's up to us as parents to find ways to say, like, does that make sense for our family? Have we exceeded that, which everyone did in the pandemic? So what are other factors that we need to look at rather than just how much is okay? Like I said, the average toddler is on screens over 2 hours a day. So it's not like the entire generation of kids have have just melted. That's just not true. So we want to be looking at, what our kids are watching. Why are we giving them screens? When are we giving them screens? Who is with them when they're watching screens? And all these other nuances. And these are really easy swaps we can make as parents because screens are not going away. And we can't carry guilt as parents in any of our sanity moments. Like whether that's like when we're taking our own shower, when we're working out, when we're having that girl time, like that is times where we're filling our bucket. And while we're filling our bucket, we're also dumping in guilt, then it cancels each other out.
So let's say the average is 2 hours. Does it include the FaceTiming?
Great question. So the AAP does not include FaceTiming as part of those logged hours. In my personal philosophy, it's still time on a screen. However, what they made the difference in terms of video chats is video chats are a real-time interaction. So right now, I'm video chatting with you. You're someone I know, and we are having a conversation. It's a dialogue. You nod your head. I nod my head. There is a sense of eye contact. It's not real eye contact, but I'm looking at you in a way, right? That's the difference of video chats and other screen time.
Mm-hmm.
So when a child is watching a TV show and a child is like, wow, that's funny, the character on the show is not saying, yeah, that was funny back. The character on the show doesn't love your child. Your child may be obsessed with them, but there's not a relationship there. Whereas when we FaceTime grandma's obsessed with us. And, grandma might try to feed us food through the screen and we can giggle and we can play games. And that's a whole other topic of like ways to bolster FaceTime. But everyone lived on FaceTime in the pandemic. There is no guilt around FaceTime. Like FaceTime is important. It is a way we stay connected with our family. It helps.
It helps develops social skills. And yeah, we know our grandparents lives in a different continent. So I know that we have like a routine video chat with grandparents because that's the way we keep relationship with the grandparents. And I totally know how kids get the love even through the screen.
That's wonderful.
I like the perspective of it's almost like a diet. Like if you choose the content intentionally, you choose some kind of science, math, then the kids really get to learn stuff from the screen, something that I am not even able to teach him without these devices. So it's really about choosing what your kid is watching. And I love this idea.
Yes. What a child watches, who they're watching with, when they're watching. That's a whole other topic. And, why they're watching, all of these things.
So I want to ask you about your services and do you do online or in person?
So TechWise Littles was founded in the pandemic with myself and another educational therapist, Kay. And we've built this online parenting community. So we have free resources. If you go to techwiselittles.com, we actually have a free guide that has different points of 5 ways to prevent tech tantrums. So head over there today. It's free. Just enter your email. And then we send you weekly tech tips of tech health for you and your children. And we also have a course called ABCs of Screen Time, which it's around 2 hours and it dives into exactly what you need to do and not do and ways that works for all different types of families because there's no one way to parent.
Is the digital course?
It's a digital self-paced course. So it's videos that are 3 to 5 minutes long. You can listen to them.
Sounds awesome. And we'll have all the links to your website and the course we'll add to the show notes. So if listener couldn't catch it, don't worry. Just click the link. That's the easiest. Do you want to add anything?
I just want to tell parents that, this can be a really loaded topic. And so if anything you've heard today makes you be like, oh no, I've messed up. No, throw that thought out the window. There's no messing up in this. No matter what yesterday was like, last month was like, the last 3 years in the pandemic were like in your home, your own tech habits. It's just like food and nutrition. There's always a new day to have a fresh start. And that's one of the things we go over deeply in the course is we have a screen cleanse for adults and kids. So if you're listening and you're like, are you kidding? My kids are on tech 10 hours a day. There's just no hope. I'm just going to throw in the towel, but I would want to start over, but I don't know how. Beautiful. We are here for you. We get the struggle. We've been there with you, and we want to have you have a fresh start.
I love the idea of screen time cleansing. So Jennifer, thank you so much. That was fabulous. And thank you for giving us those steps to follow so we can start and form those healthy screen habits. I am so glad we got to do it.
Oh, this is wonderful, Tammy. So nice to meet you this way.
Yeah, it's fun to start chatting and then finally see each other. So thank you and have a lovely day.
You as well.
Hey, it's me again. So we've got some really good stuff here, and let's wrap it up. So the 5 things Jennifer mentioned as a way to prevent tech tantrums are, first of all, choose the device your child is using. So it suggested to replace the swap handheld tech to a television. The second thing is languaging your devices, meaning to refer your computer and your iPhone as a tool for you to use other than a toy. And in addition, once you use it, explain your child what do you do with the tool. The third thing is unplugged 15, which basically means to have some undistracted attention time with your child. The fourth thing is what Jennifer called We Before 3, which actually means 3 point of connection with your child. So the first one is to prepare your child to the screen time, choose together where to sit, what to watch. Make sure for the first minute that they are comfortable. And then after this minute, you can go and do whatever you want, then come back in the middle and check up on them. And then before they finish up their time, then you would sit with them, cuddle with them, and then as much as you do with a book, like a follow-up question, what did you see? What do you think? What do you feel about that? Then just the same thing to do with whatever they watched on their TV. And then the fifth thing is a visual timers. We'll have the link to the time timer on the show note. And this time timer will help your child to transition from their screen time to their next activity. And honestly, I was obsessed with those time timers with my 2 oldest kids. We just used them all the time. And so we had to get a few of them. But anyway, today we also use the visual assistants such as Alexa or Google or Siri. Sometimes we set timers on the iPad so they can also see it. It's not as colorful as you have with the time timer, but it's really helping them. I would let them even set the timer themselves so they can say, hey, Google, please set a 5 minutes timer. For me, as I said in the episode, it was a game changer once I gave them that control in the process of setting the timer, of turning it off. All these steps really help them to own the process. And instead of having this power struggle, they're just in charge of it. So Take Wise Lil has a great newsletter. I highly recommend for you to check out their website, and to sign into this newsletter is just amazing. And you can also check the course they have. I hope this episode was helpful. If you liked it, please subscribe right here, right now to the Playground Talks podcast. And also, as you probably know, sharing is caring. So please share the episode with any friends and family who might benefit from it. And even more so, rate the show. And I want to mention again this new app that we have so we can communicate, and you can leave me a voice message, or you can even text each other. So let me know, what did you think about this episode? Was there anything that surprised you? I would love to hear that. In 2 weeks, we'll have a speech and language pathologist. We'll talk about what's the difference between speech and language, and it sounds like something just every kid is doing, but truth is that there are some great habits that you can start be doing to help your kids develop these skills. So make sure to tune in 2 weeks. And lastly, treat yourself and your kids with compassion and curiosity. See you in 2 weeks. Bye.